Okay. Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to the Planning and Land Use Management Committee. Tuesday, January 10th, 2012. Our first Plum Committee in the new year. Happy New Year, Councilmember Huizar. Thank you for joining us. The Honorable. And we have 5 items today. I think we can move pretty quickly through them. On the first one, can you read that to the record?
Yes, Councilman. Item 1 is a motion, Englander Reyes. It's instructing the Planning Department, with the assistance of the City Attorney, to report back on the feasibility of expanding the uses in the MR2 zone in CD12.
Seeing that there are no questions, we can refer that to the Planning Department and consult with the City Attorney. How many questions on that, do you, Councilmember? Okay.
And Councilman, at the request of, just to make it clear, the item stays in committee.
Right.
Right.
Stays in committee.
Emphasize that for the clerk's purposes.
Madam Clerk, has it been emphasized enough? Do we need to amplify that? Okay. All right. Item number 2.
Item 2, council members, is a motion by Councilman Huizar, Perry, Corretz, Garcetti. It's instructing the Planning Department, Building and Safety, and City Attorney, and any other appropriate departments to update the adaptive reuse ordinance.
So, any comments on this one, Councilmember? We can refer this to the Planning Department with the assistance of the Department of Building and Safety. Well, before I go there, we do have one card on this, and that is Mr. Hamid Badat. Good afternoon, sir.
Hamid Badat, 1010 Wilshire, Suite 101, Central City Development Group, LA, California, 90017. I just have a general comment. We are involved as a consultant in FEE Adaptive Reuse Project. I was wondering if we could be in the loop in the process of changes to this ordinance so we can stay updated, and if you have any feedback we can share with the Planning Department.
When you say we, who is we?
The Central City Development Group. I am actually consultant to few potential adaptive reuse project as we speak.
So this is a private entity?
I'm sorry?
This is a private group?
Private group, yes.
Okay, well, this is the beginning process, and we'll make sure that the office and planning department is aware of your interest, and so you go through the steps. We can invite them to any public meetings and or processes, correct? Mr. Bell?
Alan Bell, Planning Department. What we have discussed is establishing a working group, a task force composed of city staff as well as outside experts on the matter, and certainly Mr. Badat is the former adaptive reuse czar within the mayor's office, is no better qualified, I can think, than anybody to help us, and it's absolutely our intention to ask Mr. Badat to be a member of this working group to help us out. I believe that he's willing to do so.
Thank you very much.
Is that okay? All right. Thank you, sir. That was item number 2. We're joined by Councilman Krikorian. Thank you, sir, for joining us. We just went through 1 and 2. Number 2, we're going to refer to the Planning Department with the assistance of the Department of Building and Safety and the City Attorney and any other relevant departments to prepare update to the adaptive reuse ordinance. Also include the private groups that have been involved, and especially Mr. Badat, who is, to quote Mr. Bell, the adaptive reuse czar. Okay. I know my time is up. All right, that's number 1 and 2.
And again, item 2 also stays in committee, Council.
2 stays in committee.
Yeah.
3
is the inclusion of the McAlman House as a historic cultural monument in CD4.
Can move to on the consent. We have 3 ayes on that. And we'll move that forward. Number 4, we do have a special.
Yes, 4 council members. It's an appeal by Mr. Mcquiston. It has to do with the action of the Central LA Planning Commission, which overturned the zoning administrator. It relates to 4 variances. The main issue here is the variance that allowed 3 units rather, in the R2 zone.
Okay,
Good afternoon, Soo Chang, the City Planning Department. First of all, Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you.
Looking forward to a great year again. This application is a variance application to allow 3 dwelling units on this subject property, which is only allowed to have 2 dwelling units. Original duplex in the front portion of the property and detached garage, those were originally built in 1920s. And the building permit record shows that sometime in 1988, the prior owner had some addition to the rear of existing duplex and rebuilt the detached garage. According to the record, the current owner of this property purchased this property, I believe, in late 1990s as a 3 dwelling unit property. And in fact, they got citation by housing department because the 3rd dwelling unit was illegally converted from a garage for parking use to the 3rd dwelling unit. So the subject application is a variance application to allow 3 dwelling units in lieu of 2 units which were legally built. And originally, applicant proposed to provide the required parking for the 3rd dwelling unit in the front portion, in the front yard setback area, and pave and provide additional parking there. Original variance application was denied by the zoning administrator. On appeal filed by the applicant, the Central APC granted the applicant's appeal and approved the 3rd dwelling unit. So you have Central APC action, which was approved on October 19, 2011. As part of their action, originally proposed parking spaces were waived in the front yard, but they required instead to be provided in the rear portion of the property. And also the 3rd dwelling unit was required to be set aside for low-income housing family who has an income level of 60% of AMI. Mr. Mcquiston is appealing the Central APC decision in granting the applicant's appeal, which allows a 3rd dwelling unit. So now it's up to this committee today whether or not you're going to allow for this applicant have the 3rd dwelling unit on R2 portion of the property. The zone change happened in the mid-1980s through AB 283. Zone was changed from R2-1 to R2-1XL, so only height district was changed. Applicant thought zone change occurred from R3 to R2, but actually zone was at the time, it was R2 when city went through AB 283. You have 2 sets of findings, one for denial which was made by the zoning administrator, and the second set of findings that was the most recently approved by Central APC in October last year. I just want to make a note of the prior case this committee approved in October last year. Another property, 2 houses north from this location. I believe address is A22 and A24 North Sycamore. The property owner had a similar situation. They had 3 dwelling units on the property, and this committee approved the 3rd dwelling unit at the location on the case number ZA 2009-2937. In that case, the illegal conversion was from a recreation room to the 3rd dwelling unit. In this case, it's a similar situation. The conversion was from a garage to the 3rd dwelling unit. But some of the circumstances are almost similar to each other. So I just want to make sure that you had prior approval, 2 houses north from this location. You approved in October, and City Council approved based on your recommendation in November on that case. If you have any questions, I'll be available.
So you mentioned that last case because the facts parallel each other. They're very
It is
similar.
the 2 houses located there is one house. This address is 812, the other address is 822, so just two houses north from this location. And they also, this committee approved the 3 dwelling units on the case.
Thank you. Any questions for our staff? Seeing none. Mr. McQuiston, I believe you are the appellant on record. Good afternoon, sir. Happy New Year.
Jim McQuiston, Happy New Year. As Ms. Chang mentioned, this is another case which is rather similar. However, it's a little bit different. The main thing is, as I've given you this one-page update, we have a case which the court has already decided that we cannot do this without a zone change. And if we do these, then we're in trouble. Now, the last case is still eligible for appeal and probably will be appealed to the court, so we shouldn't even think about that. But as you notice in this that I've given you, there is a case exactly on point besides the case against Los Angeles, and that is the Cow Hollow case, which was cited by the California Supreme Court. And they said, no matter what you do, when the zone change is made, you have to go by what the current zoning is. And regardless of what you were going to do before then, if you didn't do it, it's too late. And that's really where this case fits in. There are two main things that Polly objected to and wanted a variance, and that was that she got swindled, and that's not a city problem. That's something that you should take up with her real estate agent or whoever sold the property, that this is not a R3 area. And the second one was actually listed the first one, namely this bit about, well, up the street we did something else, so therefore I'm entitled. No, that's not the way variances work. In fact, the Supreme Court has said variances should not be used in general. And if you have an already developed area, it's pretty hard to say that the land all of a sudden got an earthquake or something, and therefore we can't use the land for what it was used for before. So Los Angeles is really over the edge on variances, and we really got to control how we zone in the first place. But once we do that, then we're really stuck with what we've zoned, unless we want to rezone. And that's really the point of this particular appeal. I support the zoning administrator. The zoning administrator made the correct decision, as she did in the case above there. And since now I've pointed out that we would be in contempt by approving the variance, if we kill the variance right away, then we're in shape with the court ruling. And we can also say, well, even if someone goes to court on the first one, we can say, well, we made a mistake and we corrected it. We're going to correct that one too. So that's really my message to you. We're trying to get things in order. And when we use these, what I'd call dopey reasons for variances, like my architect had a hemorrhage and therefore I have to have it this way, these things don't go. These all have been really discussed by the California Supreme Court, and they've made it very, very, very difficult to grant variances. And these things have been decided before. We should go along with that and say, look, if you want a variance, you shouldn't file a variance. They should be told that at the planning department's desk. Instead, the planning department is saying, why don't you file for a variance, even though they know they shouldn't be doing that. And that's really what I'm getting at.
Thank you, Mr. McQuiston. Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Christopher Coons from the council office of the district.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Christopher Coons on behalf of Councilman Paul Kretz, Council District 5, asking you to uphold the Central Area Planning Commission's decision in this case. They held a series of hearings, and even when they were ready to make a decision, they sent this applicant back again to revise the findings, so they didn't approve this case until they were satisfied. What we're trying to do is resolve a long-standing situation for an elderly property owner where a unit has existed for some time. It's going to be preserved as affordable housing, and the commission felt that that was a proper action, and we feel that there's no evidence in front of you that the commission erred in making that decision. I did look at Mr. McQuiston's, the latest, the facts from today. That case, Anaya versus City of LA, had to do with a case in CD 12 in 2007, having to do with the construction of 34 condominiums and averaging density across 2 sites. So I don't think it's factually connected to what's in front of you today, which is a very minor matter where we feel the commission made the proper decision. So I'm glad to answer any questions, and we'd ask that you deny the appeal.
When you use the term "some time," when you use that phrase, do you have a ballpark in terms of years?
We believe the conversion to have occurred sometime around between 86 and 88.
Okay, so well over 20 years. Okay. Any questions from our colleagues? Okay, do we have a motion? So deny the appeal has been seconded, and that'll be the action of this committee. That takes care of items 1, 2, 3, and 4. Roberto?
And the last item is the director's report.
Would you have Mr. Bell here for a few observations and comments?
Alan Bell, Planning Department. 2011 was a very busy year, and it looks like 2012 is going to be even busier. A lot on the Planning Department's plate. The end of last year, we got the decision from the Supreme Court relative to redevelopment agencies and their particular status. And the Planning Department is taking a look at this particular issue. We will be issuing, as an interim measure, a policy memorandum affirming that all of the code regulations in the zoning ordinance that reference redevelopment, that we would continue to, during this period of uncertainty, continue to enforce those to maintain the status quo. Depending upon how this ultimately comes out, we are also working on a code amendment that would reflect any final decisions made by the City Council and the State Legislature on the status of redevelopment agencies to make sure our code is consistent with that. From a policy planning perspective, we received last year over $4 million in grant-funded activities, and we are currently in the process of ramping up 2 very important planning initiatives. The first initiative is to do station area planning around the Crenshaw line and Exposition Phase 2. This is a $3.1 million grant from Metro to do transit area focused development around those 2 transit lines through Measure R. We hope that this will be the first in a series of grants from MTA to support TOD planning within the city of Los Angeles. The second grant that we received last year that we are wrapping up is a $1.2 million grant from the Public Health Department, and this is to look at health issues and the relationship between health and land use policy, and to do a health element of the city's general plan, and to also support staff work on code amendments that would improve health outcomes within the city. For example, this would provide funding to do regulations of significant tobacco retailers, for example. We're continuing to do work on the mobility element. We are in the process of gathering significant public input on transportation issues on a citywide basis, and that is going very well. And we are also going to be working on the housing element. Every 5 years, the city has to update its housing element. and that time to start work on the city's current housing element, we will start work this year to meet the time frame that the state has imposed upon us. The mayoral ordinance, there's been quite a bit of press and publicity and discussion about the city's mayoral ordinance. We released the draft last year. Today, there is a staff hearing to gather additional public input on the mayoral ordinance, and we hope to be able to take that to the Planning Commission for adoption in the spring. And then finally, at the end of the year, we submitted our budget to the mayor's office, and we will be having discussions in the next 2 to 4 weeks with the mayor's office and the CAO on our budget request. And in terms of staffing, we have 5 planning assistant vacancies, and we will be re-giving the planning assistant professional exam and are working on filling those vacancies post-haste. One of those vacancies is a bike planner, and we did receive authorization to fill that particular vacancy, so we will be filling that most likely with an internal transfer, and that's to do the environmental work on the implementation of the bike master plan that the council adopted last year. And the other vacancies relate to day-to-day case processing. So that's a brief synopsis of some of the highlight of some of the what's going on in the planning department. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, one, thank you for your hard work, and to the whole department for the diligence, knowing that almost half of the department has been moved on. These grants, will they be? Well, you mentioned 4 planning assistants, but these grants, will they have additional staff, or they'll help sustain current staff?
They will support, it's going to be a combination of consultants, staff, through internal transfers, probably new hires off the planning assistant examination that we'll be giving. So we haven't decided what the exact mix is going to be, but it certainly is going to provide an opportunity for us to expand our resource base through consultants and through civil service hires. Obviously, it comes with responsibility to turn around products very quickly to the funding source.
But when we look at the notion of revenue generation, how the city generates revenue, and we look at these functions and we see what we're not doing because we don't have enough staff. In your work program and these decisions, have we the capacity to understand what we are not generating in revenue because we cannot perform certain functions? Are we thinking that way in terms of analyzing our positions and the function of the planning department as it relates to the quality of the city, but just as important, making sure we don't hurt ourselves because we don't have either the bodies, the skill set, and or the functions to generate revenue for the city?
Well, in terms of generating revenue for the city, I mean, I'm assuming that means the planning functions that are going to be approving businesses, small businesses, mom and pops that need planning work. All of that is fee supported. And as I had mentioned, 4 of the 5 vacancies are in the case review portion of the department, so they will be able to support the reviewed applications that are in turn going to be helping businesses start up and open up in LA. So the grant funded work on a long-range basis, I mean, it's very important from a policy and a long-range planning standpoint to take advantage of the opportunities, particularly that our investments in transit rail are being made to make these places the best and most attractive places to build in Los Angeles, and to carry out the vision that we have in our general plan that we want to focus new growth should it occur around transit. So that's the real opportunity, and that will, on a long-term basis, really shore up the city's economy.
I'll have more discussion, Mr. LeGrand, on that, but that's something I think we need to explore. But I appreciate your feedback on that. Any questions from my colleagues on that? Okay, well, that covers this afternoon's committee. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Anyone with public comment?
Hi, Paul Dumont with North Hills West Neighborhood Council. I'm here representing myself, though. Oh, sure, I have one of those.
This is why I didn't call public comments. I thought we didn't have any.
I want to talk real quick.
That's a good out. Thank you, sir.
Just wanted to mention real quick on community care. A lot's changed since council asked the city attorney to draft the final draft ordinance. We've had AB 109, the prisoner realignment, be implemented starting in October, which fundamentally changed criminal justice, housing, probationer and parolee housing. When the ordinance was requested by the full council, there was no provisions for parolee and probationer housing, and those provisions are back in the final draft that is pending in this committee now. It's my understanding that the mayor's office has a big problem with that, with the parolee provisions, and that they're opposed to that. But I really don't want to talk about all the reasons that community care is a miserable failure. I'd rather talk about a real solution briefly. I know the Corporation for Supportive Housing, Public Council, everybody's knocked down your doors telling you why you shouldn't do it. But at the end of the day, even if it was passed today, and I'm a sober housing provider in the San Fernando Valley, in Council District 12 where this started, even if it passed today as written, it wouldn't close down the bad sober living homes. And I've been following this back in 2007 when Greg Smith authored the motion, and I'm here to tell you that they wouldn't provide a solution. The bad sober living homes are still going to be there. Orange County ordinance that they passed down there is in the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals right now. The Department of Justice has weighed in on that ordinance with an amicus brief and stated that the Newport Beach's ordinance is discriminatory. It looks like it's going to be defeated in the 9th Circuit. Who knows what they're going to do, but that's the path. It's a 2-page brief that pretty much just says it discriminates against disabled people. And I know that wasn't Greg Smith's intent. His intent was to get rid of the bad sober living house next door in the R1 zones. One lesson from Orange County that I'd like to leave you with, because I know you got other things to do. They have a certification program there where they certify sober living homes, and any referrals that are done by government agencies must go to the certified house. There are other alternatives. I've been following this for years. I'd love to meet with all of you. I'll send you another email and ask for another meeting with your planning deputies. But at the end of the day, I want to offer some real solutions to a real problem. There's still bad houses out there.
And your name again, sir?
Paul Dumont, D-U-M-O-N-T.
Thank you. Mr. Dumont, you should know that several offices are, without violating the Brown Act, are speaking to each other, and we are trying to find the path of least resistance in achieving the goals that were set when this was started back with the former council member, Mr. Smith. So we are working hard to figure out a way to get to that goal without inadvertently hurting other individuals and or entities. So we've been very diligent about that, and it is taking longer than we anticipated. But we are having those conversations. You should know that.
I appreciate you trying to avoid the unintended consequences. And again, I'll send an email and I'll offer to meet with you guys again. I've attended every meeting, read every document, and because I have the time to do it. So I've studied it well, and I'll be glad to share that knowledge with you. I've shared it with Tom Rothman, with Alan.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
I'd like to find some solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mr. Mcquiston for public comment.
Jim McQuiston. One thing that, of course, as you know, I'm very concerned with the city's budget, and next year is going to be horrendous. We're probably going to have to lay off firemen and policemen. And one thing that we can do in planning, as I suggested before, is think about what the Supreme Court has said, and we can accomplish what we want with the people that we have now. And if we make an attempt at doing that, then perhaps they're going to lay off, cutting off our critical planning personnel. I don't want to see planning reduced anymore, and I'll fight for them in the budget. But the way it's organized now, if we're inviting people to make more work for the planning department, when we're not supposed to be doing that, it makes it very difficult for me to justify the budget of planning. And I do want to say that I appreciate Alan for his frank comments today, and I think they're very well deserved. But there are some things we have to look at a system outside the box, and now is the time to do it.
Thank you, Mr. McQuiston. Anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.